In whose hands are you safe after Uhuru leaves in 2022? Yes, in whose hands are you safe? This question was posed by Francis Atwoli, Kotu Secretary General, combative, while appearing on the Jeff Koinange show, JK Live, on Citizen TV on Wednesday. To some people, it may look an empty question. To some, it may even be an irritation. But this, dear Kenyans, is not an empty question. In whose hands are you safe? In elections, especially those that are closely fought across the world, this question becomes the deciding question. So it's not an empty question. Voters, institutions and countries, and those who have an interest in a country are always asking this question. It is question number one on the table for investors. If you want to invest in a country like Kenya and you come from Brazil, would you just bring your billions? No. You assess the security of that country, the investment climate, and nothing guarantees you more than a stable government. And a stable government doesn't just happen. I know there are countries whose stability arises out of years of a functional public service, so that the politicians may come and go. Governments may fall even after a month or two or three, a year. Israel, Japan, Italy, and other parliamentary democracies. But the public service holds steady. But even in those countries, the question of sovereign risk is always there. So investors want to know how secure the investment will be, how stable the government of a country is, and that is more or less, in most cases, a question of who is in power. And that's why businessmen always take a keen interest in those contesting for the presidency of a country. And that explains partly, of course, the Raila people will talk about rigging. But in my view, that explains why he did not win in 2007. If winning means going to sleep in State House. That explains why he did not occupy State House in 2013. Because that question was asked, in whose hands would you put your investment? Where would you put your investment? Would it be Kenya or another country if Kenya was under Mwai Kibaki in 2007? Would you invest in Kenya? Supposing it was Raila Odinga in 2007. Would you invest here or you'll take elsewhere? Those questions were asked. Western powers, they looked at Raila as a radical then, as a person not very easy to trust because of his policies. They thought like his father, he was socialist leaning to the east. They were hesitant. There was the deep state also. There were the Kenyan voters. These questions are always asked. So Francis Atwoli did not ask an empty question. In whose hand? Now we've gone full circle. You want to ask yourself, what will Kenyans say? In whose hands will they feel safe? You know why this is not an empty question again for Kenya? Because if you look at the contest between Raila and William Samoei Ruto, typical of how our politics has been in the last 4 or so elections from 2007, we are almost at a 50-50. That the victor and the loser are almost 50-50. So you need a few votes to tilt the balance. And this is how that question becomes important. That undecided Kenyan trying to figure out between Ruto and Raila, in whose hands will I be? Because the rest will have decided using other parameters and other factors including tribe, including region, including following their leaders. But there will be that small in the middle, in the gray area, undecided between Ruto and Raila. To them, this question of in whose hands are you safe is no longer an empty question. It's not a sloganeering question. It's an election question. And in answering that question, the presidency would go to Raila or Ruto. Bring in the Western powers. Close your eyes for a minute and put yourself in their place. When the Western countries ask themselves, between Ruto and Raila, in whose hands would Kenya be safe? Between Ruto and Raila, who would give the kind of stability to enable investors, to enable Western countries feel free to advise their people to travel to Kenya and invest? That is not an empty question. In whose hands? Is a question that will be asked by strong businessmen in this country. Yes, you may think they are in hotels that don't hold sway, they have no influence. Of course you'll be wrong. There is no country where its influential citizens don't have a say. The billionaires you saw and the other billionaires you have not seen and the others you'll see in this country will ask that question. In whose hands will Kenya be safe enough for our investment? In whose hands will Kenya be safe enough for us to continue investing and feel that our property in this country is secure? That is never an empty question in an election. And even ordinary Kenyans are going to get to a point where they look at the two. They look at Raila, they look at Ruto, and they begin to ask themselves, who among these two gentlemen looks presidential? Again, the question of in whose hands? In whose hands are you safe? That question is going to feature. And it's going to be asked by various sectors of the economy, by various groups of persons and individuals. They are going to find themselves asking that question as we move towards 2022 in an election such as ours. This election is uniquely different from the election of 2013 and 2017. And that makes that question all the more relevant. And now there are those who are saying, this is Atwoli as usual. By the way, there are many people who don't know Francis Atwoli. He happens to be a brother and a friend. If you sit with that gentleman, as I have done, then you realize that's an intelligent man. Kenyans are used sometimes to looking at people using very small, traditional and conventional parameters. But there are people who have been around and they have gathered experience. People like Atwoli were close to Moi for many years. And they know. So when they give you a history of what they have seen, when Francis Atwoli says he has seen popular individuals, when he mentions Kenneth Stanley Njindo Mativa, that's not just a name he's throwing around. For those of us who are here, I had known nobody will ever stop Matiba from becoming president. The way he had charted and put his trajectory in place, he was ending at State House. There were many others unmentioned by Atwoli. So in other words, he's trying to say he understands this country, he understands the politics of this country, and he knows when he makes an observation, it is an informed observation. That explains why, as I tell you, he's not just an empty man the way some people might think. If you sit with him, you'll be shocked at how intelligent he is. I have heard even people say, Raila is an old man, he's tired. That man, some have said, is not even intelligent. I want to tell you, if you sit with Raila Odinga, then you realize this is a brain. This is an intellectual powerhouse. Just like William Ruto. These are very intelligent human beings. If you have the luck, the chance to interact with them, they are highly intelligent people. So people like Atwoli, they know what they are talking about. And many of the things Francis has said from 2014, when he talked about winner take all, around 2017, when he talked about Uhuru being too young, and that's the only thing that people picked. In other words, he was saying, we will need to re-engineer our politics so that there is less friction. And you can see BBI picked up. And although BBI has collapsed for now, that thinking, that idea is still on board. So in whose hands, asked by Francis Atwoli, cannot be imagined to be an empty question. It's a question Kenyans will ask themselves as we approach 2022. My advice, and we say free because nobody pays for this. If you are trying to be the president of this country, and you are William Samoei Ruto, and you are Raila Odinga, put that question from Atwoli at the back of your mind. What you say, how you say it, the company you keep, the things you have done in the past, the kind of person you think Kenyans are now going to interact with, the image of self. What image comes out when people see William Ruto? Now it may not be very relevant, but as we approach the elections, as the choice of president becomes imminent, it's there, it's coming tomorrow. We are in January, we are in February, we are in March, we are in May. August is not far away. We are about to put our hands, in our country in somebody's hands. That question will no longer be empty. In whose hands will Kenya be safe? In whose hands will a Kenyan feel safe? The Kenyan is going to ask himself, I have children in this country. I have grandchildren. In whose hands do I want to leave my children and my grandchildren? In whose hands do I hand myself after Uhuru leaves? So I just share with Kenyans that that is not an empty question. That is not an empty question. And Francis Atwoli should be commended for bringing to us what I consider to be the campaign question, the election question in this electoral cycle. The 2022 election is majorly going to be decided upon asking and answering that question. In whose hands are you as a Kenyan safe? Not safe in the petty small manner. Not safe because somebody can come and beat you if Ruto is the president. Not safe to mean if Raila is in power, some people will come and harass you. No. Safe in its huge understanding, in its big understanding. Safe in the context of a country moving forward, a country facing the challenges. Because, as it were, we are already aware, our economy is doing badly, joblessness, level of poverty, and general decay. That question is not empty. Who between Raila and Ruto do you think can get this country with the challenges it has and turn the economy around? Who between Raila and Ruto do you feel as a Kenyan will handle the politics of the day? During elections, our politics are very volatile. That question is going to come. A story is told that when people are pushing Moi to support Kibaki, Saitoti, Mudavadi, Kalonzo, Raila, one day somebody told me, he asked somebody, or a group of persons, he told them, do you know sleeping in this state house or being in this state house when there's chaos in Nairobi is not a joke? And he asked them, between so and so and so and so, who can control Nairobi when there's chaos? Between so and so Who is capable of bringing Nairobi to a standstill? And the answer was leaving Moi with the choice between Raila and Uhuru. That tells you, being president of the Republic of Kenya, sometimes, many times, oftentimes, amount to managing pressure. And therefore the question from Francis Atwoli, in whose hands will the country be safe? In whose hands will you feel safe? Who between the two will have the capacity to handle the pressure brought by the politics of this country, to turn around the economy? Who between the two? In whose hands will you as a Kenyan voter feel safe after Uhuru Kenyatta in 2022? That is the question.